But also this story that Seth Davis covers college basketball. Brett McMurphy on his Twitter feed, the Big 12 seriously considering Gonzaga in 24-25, telling Action Network HQ, first reported by Seth Davis. Decision may occur in a couple of weeks. Watch, which would be a major coup for the Big 12 when it comes to basketball. Gonzaga, though, would probably have to look at taking less revenue because it would be men's basketball, you would think, only. Your thoughts? We've discussed Gonzaga. We did quite a bit during the entire early part of this year. They then got pushed aside like UConn did, and now it appears as if they still might tinker here with Gonzaga.
I think this is Brett Yormark obviously is trying to build up the basketball side of this because, you know, even with what he's done with what they've done with football and the whole conference and making it 16 teams and adding the Pac-12 teams that they've added and everything they've done to make it a coast-to-coast league, they still are going to run into the problem in the short term and maybe even the long term that they don't have the brands that the other leagues do, especially the Big Ten and the SEC. So how do you increase your value in other places? You make the best basketball conference, and I do think that the Big 12 will want to do this because, one, he delivered exactly on what he said he was going to do with expanding the league, and when these things come out, they don't usually kind of go away. The Big 12 has been very intentional about what information we know about expansion, and then, you know, once they figure out the details about how do you have a 17-team conference tournament, you know, does the best team get a bye? What if they're two teams that, you know, are the same? Do you take the bottom three out? I don't know. Whatever it's going to be, that'll be interesting. But I'm for them adding Gonzaga in basketball, if not just to make the basketball season that much more interesting.
Well, if we didn't have enough to talk about, I mean, having all this start to swirl again is certainly, you know, some extra salt and pepper on what's already a pretty good meal because, I mean, it's, you know, we know how crazy realignment talk can get, and we know how much, you know, the Big 12 is, you know, involved in trying to find any way imaginable to, you know, increase their product value and just, you know, the spotlight on the conference, and they're willing to do whatever. And, a couple of months ago, I mean, Brett Yormark flat out said, we're done at 16. That was the commissioner said, we're done at 16. Had mentioned having the overtures, you know, with others like Gonzaga, but just, you know, acknowledged that it didn't go anywhere and that they got what they wanted when they got the packed schools. But you never say never, and it is what it is when it comes to a landscape that I don't think anybody really has a great feel for where it's going ultimately and what that's going to look like or when that's going to look like, I think is the biggest question as much as anything else. But I got to be honest with you guys. I'm not that thrilled by this news. I'm not like super excited about, Gonzaga's joining the Big 12. It's not a knock on the Zags. I think that they would be a great addition as far as a basketball school and other sports as well. For those that may wonder, yes, this would be, you know, other sports too, based on what I read. You know, obviously not football because they don't have a program, but they'd play, I guess, in most of the other sports, if not all of them. But I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it'll make for some, you know, obviously some good basketball matchups when they play Kansas and Baylor and whoever else. But this doesn't have me just over the moon as far as, that was the key to unlocking all of this extra potential. And, you know, I saw this comment made, I think the first time around, and I think it bears repeating now is, you know, is Gonzaga guaranteed to be a basketball dynasty for the next 10 years? You know, how much of this is a short-term move just for like, hey, let's see Mark Few these next couple of years and what that turns into and what that adds. And, you know, then after that, we'll worry about wherever the landscape is and what that looks like in the end. You know, I don't know what those discussions are like behind the scenes. But, yeah, I mean, it leans into the schools, into the conference's basketball identity. It adds another very quality program and valuable program. But it doesn't get me super excited, to be honest with you, because honestly, I would kind of like things to settle down for a little bit and just sort of take in what's already happened. And, you know, before we could even really get into the the four new schools, then it was the whole four corner situation. Now that hasn't even died down just yet. They're still in the middle of their last season with their old conference, and now it's like, and here's now Gonzaga, and then, you know, whatever potentially comes from the PAC situation that we're about to talk about. And I don't know. It's just a little bit too chaotic. I know it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, but I just wish you could kind of take your breath. But I understand from their point of view, they can't really probably afford to do that. And obviously the coast-to-coast mission of Brett Yormark, has been out there and been very public for a while, and they're not quite that way if you look at it. And I guess this would help establish that a bit more. I would take it as, good news for anybody out west, in particular the two we're about to talk about, as potentially a good sign. I don't know if it means anything in the long run, but yeah, I'm just that's cool. I'm not anti Gonzaga, but I'm also not like super over the moon about what that means.
I don't have a feeling for this either way. I just know that they already have brands in basketball, even with losing Oklahoma and Texas. They've got brands in basketball. So this would be at least another, and they again maybe just wanting to kind of stay ahead of the curve, or at least always trying to have something in the oven, so to speak, or on the grill. And so there you are with that. Now, this Will Crick story, and it's a lot to do